Ah, no, we haven't got a shilling to get in the meter, mate.
I think we're...
There we go. You're now live.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via Cambridgeshire County Council's website. As with any virtual meeting, we may suffer some technical problems, and if we do, obviously, we will do our best to solve them. Can I remind members and officers that all virtual meetings are being recorded and that the recording of this meeting will be published on the Cambridgeshire County Council's website. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Councillor Bill Handley, the new District Councillor's representative, to his first meeting of the board. Bill, hi, welcome. Can I also welcome Sandy Smith, who is substituting for Val Moore. I will begin by calling the names of all members of the board to establish your presence for the record. So please indicate present when I call your name. Councillor Holditch.
Present.
Councillor Fitzgerald, is he with us yet? Maybe, Michelle, might he be joining us later? Or have we not heard anything?
I've not heard anything.
Okay. Councillor Hudson.
Present.
Dr. Liz Robin.
Present.
Wendy Ogle-Wellborn, I know, will be joining us later. Adrian Chapman.
Present.
Gary Housen. Not as yet. Louis Camphor. Not as yet. Louise Mitchell. Not as yet. Bill Hanley, Councillor Bill Hanley.
Yes, present. Welcome. Thank you.
Sandy Smith.
Present, yes, thank you.
Councillor Ray Bisbee.
Present.
Hi, Ray. And myself, Councillor Hitford. Okay, and I can see Councillor Wayne Fitzgerald's just joining us now. Hi, Wayne. We've just done the roll call. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 1, apologies for absence and declarations of interest. We've received apologies from Val Moore and Jan Thomas. And obviously, apologies as we've gone through the roll call there are noted, but people might be joining us. Declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? If so, please raise your hand. I'm seeing no hands, thank you. Okay, agenda item 2. Notes from the meeting on the 5th of October 2020. We're being asked to approve the notes of the meeting on the 5th of October 2020 as a correct record. Can I ask if anyone who does not agree with this proposal to use the raise hand function now? Again, I see no objections to the proposal to approve the notes as a correct record, so we'll take that as carried. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, action log. An action log has been included in the published papers for this meeting. All the actions are marked complete, except for the action at the top of page 17. Can the Acting Police and Crime Commissioner please provide an update on that? Ray, if you could, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The detail I can give you is that as of today, we have 230 fixed penalty notices issued. 2 of them were for £10,000 fines for parties that had happened, I believe, of over 30 people. I think that was published in the papers. As relation to the breakdown, unfortunately, that is done by London, and we haven't got that information at the moment, that the information that you was asking as to the gender or age groups and everything. We haven't got that at the moment, but we did get it once, which we gave out, but we haven't got the second one as yet.
Just to be clear, I'm not sure I was asking for gender or age groups. That sounds a bit sexist or ageist.
No,
but I was asking if there was more
any
specific information.
Yeah, no, any other. But as I say, 230 is as of this morning, 9 a.m.
Okay, and Ray, is there any, if I may, because I'm seeing no one else that wants to speak, and I think it was myself that brought this forward from last time, is there any change in the attitude or stance of the police towards lockdown this time round?
The 4Es are still being used, and we're using exactly the same. So you can see that there are 2 £10,000 tickets, fines that have been given out. which shows that where they are needed, the police will respond. And I have asked that question, and the Chief Constable has confirmed to me that yes, the officers will respond where people do not accept the advice and encouragement to agree with the information that they're being given.
Roger,
Okay,
can I
thank you.
comment? I can't
And,
find
and
the
I just
hand.
wanted to finish off, if I could, John, just one very quick question. Where does the money go for the fines that have been collected? I think people will be interested in that.
Personally, I have not asked that question, so I can't give you an answer. I don't think it comes to the forces. I think it goes to the government or a central agency.
Could you find out for next time, please? That would be great.
I will try and find
Thank
out for you.
Thank you.
But I can say that you will know that the councils have their officers now that are helping. In Peterborough, we've got officers going out with the officers that the council have got to help people and explain the arrangements for COVID and how to respond, just to make sure that people do understand. So we're not out there trying to prosecute everybody. It's trying to make sure everybody understands to keep our communities safe. So that is the main issue that we have.
Understood. All right. Thank you. John Holditch, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, because Ray's just partially. I think there has been a change of attitude in the police. In fact, they're working very well with us in Peterborough. Now we have 4 hours a day of dedicated police time. And also when we get these marshals actually onto the street, identifiable, and they've agreed to work with them, I'm sure we'll see some positive reaction from not only from the police, but from the public as well.
Thanks, John. That's welcome news. Thank you. Okay, so just actions still remaining then. If we could have a breakdown when possible of that, Ray, that would be good. And obviously where the money for the fines goes, if you can find out, we'll bring that back next time. Thank you. Any other questions at all for?
I'd like to do an email now, try and find out that information for today.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. I've got no one else on this particular bit of the action log. Can I also invite Sandy Smith from Health Watch to provide more information on the campaign updates on page 15?
Yeah, thank you very much. We've just completed a survey and published a report, and communications came out as the top issue, probably not surprisingly, in both the briefings and the final report. I think it's what we hear from people. A lot of people have been ringing us about confusion, about shielding, test and trace. So it's quite clear when people approach us, they don't receive the information in distinct pockets of information. So it's quite hard for the public to actually distinguish what is coming from the health part of the system, what's public health and what's local government. So people receive information in a stream depending on what their needs are, what their circumstances are. So but basically the overall feedback and perception that we have is that people have been confused by conflicting messages. And Health Watch has fed this back to the local authority in the past, and we've worked together to put out clarifications. So I think anything that, from a Health Watch perspective, from local people's perspective, anything that can be done to try and make things a little bit clearer for people would be very, very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Any questions at all on that? No, thank you very much. Thanks, Sandy, for that. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 4, public questions. We've received no public questions for this meeting. Agenda item 5, the Health Protection Board report. Can I invite Liz Robin, Director of Public Health, to provide the board with a presentation on this item, please? Liz.
Thank you, Councillor Hickford. And Michelle, would it be possible to screen share it, please?
I'm not able to at the moment, so I'll ask Dan if he's able to help on that one. I can't see the screen when I do that.
Okay.
Dan, can you help on this one?
Yeah, bear with me a second.
I've also just got a message from Wendy Ogle-Welborn. She can't access the Zoom at the moment. So Dan, when you try to do this, can you try and help Wendy as well, please?
He is doing that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And certainly I can just start by
Liz, can you at least start with an introduction while we're trying and see if we can get the presentation?
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Oh, here we go.
I think we're here, so perfect timing. The Health Protection Board has been meeting weekly since we last met as a local outbreak engagement board, and a considerable amount of work has been going on. Could I take the next slide, please, Dan? I think we may just be waiting. Yes.
Here we go.
Okay, so the UK positive cases are still increasing, as you know, although the rate of increase is now slowing. And we have some details of the national picture on this slide. You can see the east of England on the map of the UK, and you can actually see Fenland, Huntingdonshire, East Cambridgeshire as a little outpost of blue in the middle of a sea of orange, which shows that we do have some lower rates in this area than the national average rates. And that is very positive and reflects the good work that our communities and residents have been doing to keep the COVID rates down. Next slide, please. So nationally, the figures that we normally publish from local authority public health are based on people going for tests. And that doesn't pick up everyone who has a COVID-19 infection. So the Office of National Statistics are also conducting their population survey to see what the rates of both people with symptoms and people without symptoms who have COVID-19 are in the population. And nationally, it looks like just over 1%, or that was the rate towards the end of October. In the east of England, just below 0.5%, so about 1 in 200 people. So a lot of people in the communities with either symptomatic or asymptomatic COVID-19 infection at any one time. Next slide, please. Turning to our local picture, in Cambridgeshire, in the last week of October, we had 519 people who tested positive for COVID-19. And that was actually slightly less than the week before, which is good, but a lot more than we were seeing in August and September. And our weekly incidence rate, which is important because we compare ourselves with other areas through this rate, is 79 per 100,000 population. And this is less than national and regional averages. So on the graph on this slide, you can see the orange rate is dark orange, is the national rate of COVID-19 cases, up to about 230 nationally now, I think. The yellow line is the regional rate for the east of England, and the blue bars are Cambridgeshire. So we're similar to the regional picture, but actually doing a little bit, just a little bit lower in the last couple of weeks. Next slide, please. A similar picture for Peterborough. And what you can see here is that in the last week of October in Peterborough, 297 people tested positive for COVID. And that is a weekly incidence rate of 147 per 100,000 population. So that is above the regional average, although still below the national average. And it is still rising. So there has been a rise from the previous week. And in Peterborough, that rate is quite close to sort of informal thresholds as to where you might in the old system have started a discussion about moving from medium tier to higher tier. Next slide, please. COVID-19 related deaths reported by the Office of National Statistics remain low across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and so do all-cause deaths, although those have increased nationally. But there is some delay in reporting because of the need for deaths to be registered. So the most rapid information on deaths actually comes through the hospital's deaths reporting. And those deaths are not always of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough residents. Next slide, please. So As I've said, there's variation in the rates of COVID-19 infection across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area. What we've seen since our last meeting a month ago is quite a spike in Cambridge City. This is associated with the return of the Cambridge University students. So in the second and third weeks of the Cambridge University term, we were seeing a lot of cases amongst students and a lot of cases in that age group of 18 to 22. And we've been working very actively with the university on that. So a week ago, you would have seen a rate in Cambridge City of about 193 per 100,000 residents. That's down now to 143 because we've seen the cases in students going down again. Which is really positive and shows some effective management of infection and spread of infection there. Otherwise, more sort of general spread. So on governance, no, we're happy to move on. Since that we last met, a lot has happened. National government introduced the system of tiers of intervention with a medium tier, a high tier and a very high tier of national intervention. Both Cambridgeshire and Peterborough were in the medium tier, which meant that national regulations applied, but with no additional intervention or restrictions. But what we did see was that both Cambridge City and Peterborough were getting quite close to some of those trigger thresholds to start a conversation about moving tiers. But we were both in medium tier, which is actually the lowest tier, when that the tier system was suspended, and clearly the tier system has been suspended for the current 4-week national lockdown, though the plan is, I believe, to reintroduce it once the lockdown ends. So we've been busy updating the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Outbreak Control Plan just to include the new tier system and the 4-week national lockdown, so that the plan we have on our website is for the public is up to date with the latest developments. Next slide, please. Key actions in the past month. There have been a lot of actions, but these are the key ones. So our outbreak management work, which I've described before, has been busy because the numbers of cases have gone up. That means the numbers of small outbreaks and clusters have gone up. So we have agreed additional recruitment to support those functions as the workload has increased along with the case rates. On our local action plans, there's been some really important developments there. So we all know that the local action in our communities, and this is always what this board has said, needs to be at the heart of our outbreak prevention and control plans, because it's all about people's behaviour in their communities, and that determines how the virus spreads and the rates we have. So district and city councils have already done a huge amount to prevent and manage outbreaks and to support people in their communities. And we're formalising this and developing it further by having asked each district and city council to produce a COVID-19 local action plan. And we're tying that in with the governance of the local outbreak control plan. And I'm meeting with all of the district and city chief execs this week, just to ensure that we have really good join up, and they are being fantastic, really enthusiastic about that. Some really good constructive work. And as our part in that, we are providing, or one of our parts, we're providing weekly summaries to each district of their epidemiology, where their cases are, what's going on, so that we can shape a rapid response to the epidemiology. Working on a model developed in Peterborough, which Adrian Chapman's been very involved with developing. Next slide, please. We've also worked very closely with both universities, Anglia Ruskin and Cambridge University, and we've also worked with the City Council and Public Health England on that. It's very positive what we're seeing in Cambridge University with the asymptomatic testing. The proportion of students who test positive has gone down from 0.9% to 0.7% over the past 3 weeks. And the number of symptomatic cases has fallen as well. We're working closely with Anglia Ruskin and ensuring that we're very engaged with them, and we're also working very closely, and I know Councillor Holditch asked about this last last time with the Peterborough University Centre. We have checked that that engagement is strong, and it is. In schools, our number of school cases has increased during October, along with the overall increase in cases. And we have single cases, clusters and small outbreaks. We have a good system to manage those through the education cell, working with school head teachers. And this will remain an area of focus because schools obviously are remaining open during lockdown. Next slide, please. In our care homes, what's something to note is that the pilot of asymptomatic testing of health professionals who visit care homes was trialled in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and that's now being rolled out nationally. So that's positive. And in our workplaces, lots of work going on there across environmental health teams, public health, and the workplaces themselves. Many of the businesses are working so hard on this to prevent and manage workplace COVID-19 cases and outbreaks. And of course, many of our workplaces will stay open over the 4-week lockdown, all those which need people to be on site. And we have a lot of those, including food production. Although anyone who can work from home should do so. Next slide, please. Going on to testing, we've had 2 local testing sites open since we last met as a board. The site in Gladstone Park Community Centre, which we're very pleased to see back online, because that does mean that local people have much better access again. And also a site in the Abbey Leisure Centre, or close to the Abbey Leisure Centre, which is also close to Anglia Ruskin University and enables good access there. These are commissioned nationally by the Department of Health and Social Care, but we work closely with them on that. And we've also offered to participate in a national pilot of asymptomatic testing using lateral flow machines. That's like the pilot in Liverpool, although not at such a large scale. And we'll be receiving more information on that shortly. We have heard from the department, and they're keen to engage with us. So that is also something we'll keep you very much informed about and ask for your steer on. Local enhanced contact tracing. The current service in Peterborough is handed down cases that the national test and trace system has not been able to contact within 24 hours. That's just the cases, not the close contacts. We're going to launch that service across the whole of Cambridgeshire as well. And it's a really good example of system-wide collaboration, because to make it possible, we have engaged all the district environmental health services, and we have made a mutual aid agreement across all the districts and Peterborough, so that that service can run 7 days a week with mutual aid across the system, depending on where the majority of cases are and where it's needed. And work is in train to model how more contact tracing work could be taken on locally. Clearly, that's a key feature of the 4-week lockdown, to improve the test and trace system, and how we could add value. And I would want to emphasize that going back to World Health Organization advice and really sort of public health practice, it's not just about testing and contact tracing, it's about finding the cases, which good contact tracing helps you to do if you ask the right questions. So it's finding, testing, tracing, and then ensuring really effective isolation of cases and contacts, and supporting people to do that. So we call it the FTTIS approach rather than just the TNT approach. And we're looking at the staffing and resource requirements for us to do that as local best practice, and just looking at different models for that. So I'll stop there. That's a very quick run through of a lot of work, and happy to take questions.
Thanks, Liz. I put my hand up, so I'm on front of the queue if I could. So I've got 2 questions, please. The first one is the local contact tracing that you've just been talking about. I've heard that it's very successful locally. Have you got any figures that you could share with the success of local tracing?
Yes, so in Peterborough, for most of the period, we've been finding a success rate of between 85 and 90% in terms of getting in contact with and interviewing those cases who had not been successfully contacted by the national test and trace system. We have seen a slight decline in that recently to, I think it's between 70 and 80% now, Adrian. And that is because we have found that more people are not entering contact details, or even in a few cases, not entering the correct contact details. So we are, and there's a limit to what you can do if you don't get anything down from the centre. And we have got some concerns about that. We're not sure whether people are worried about having to stop work if they are on 0 hours contracts or self-employed, and also whether anyone might be worried about fines. So we want to, in our messaging, and Christine or Adrian may want to comment, we want to really emphasise that we will support anyone who needs to self-isolate, so they can give their contact details in confidence, and we will support them locally.
So what you're saying is that the ones that central government couldn't trace, locally we have a success rate of, well, between 70 and 90%, and that includes data corrupt leads that we're given. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it is.
Well, I think that's a really good rate. So brilliant. Can we just go back to the slides very quickly, just because I've forgotten my second question, and I know it was on there somewhere. Oh, Adrian, do you want to come in on that while we're putting the slides up?
Thanks, Councillor Hickford. Yeah, just to add to what Liz was saying, really, we have, for the board's reassurance, made arrangements for financial and other forms of support to compel people that need to self-isolate to do so. We want there to be, one of our consistent messages that I'm sure Christine will cover later, is that there can be no excuse to people self-isolating. There's no reason not to. But we haven't vigorously promoted that yet. I think from Monday our intention is to do so, so that we can alleviate people's anxieties and get start to encourage people to leave proper contact details. But the beauty of a local model is that even if you don't have good details, you can cross-match lots of data sets and chunk up different ways of looking at data to really try and track people down and ultimately get boots on the ground to go and knock on doors. So I certainly would advocate for that local delivery of contact tracing. It's very successful. Thanks, Adrian. Thank you for that. Dan, could you go down to one of the last slides, please? 12, it might be, or 11 or 12. Try 11 then, please. Something. No, try 13 then, please. It will jog my memory at some point, I think.
I think you may be on mute, Councillor Hickford.
Oh, schoolboy error. Schoolboy. I was trying to do so many things. Okay. I don't know where I got to, but I'll come back to you later when I remember my question. So thank you, Liz. And I've got no one else that wishes to speak. Does anyone else wish to ask questions on this at the moment? I'm not seeing anything. So with my mute off, I'll move on to agenda item 6 now, which was separate to the agenda pack on the website. So this is communication and campaign updates. So could I ask Christine Birchall, Head of Communications and Information, to introduce the report. Hi, Christine.
Hello, good morning still. Okay, so what I normally do is a quick run through of the work that we've undertaken over the last month. But this obviously speaking to you today on the first full day of national lockdown, I also wanted to take you through some of the communications that we've got planned for the next 4 weeks. So in terms of the activity update since we last met, the Council COVID campaign, which was aimed very much at our 18 to 30-year-olds, the first part of that concluded. We'd started quite a lot of evaluation of that and had begun the next set of communications on that, which was very much informed by working with young people at universities and through some of our youth forums, working with our district colleagues. So we were just getting ready to launch that, and of course we came into the next local lockdown, so that's been slightly put in abeyance, but we've had a very good uptake of all of those materials. Last week, hopefully you will have seen also the Halloween campaign, which is encouraging people to do Halloween differently. That was again very, very successful. We had 84 different bits of communications that went out as part of that campaign. They were shared 222,000 times during the week. And what we were doing, it very much informs the next part of the work that I was going to talk to you about, was not just telling people what they couldn't do, but actually telling them what they could do. So making some suggestions for alternatives to going out and trick-and-treating for families in terms of cooking activities, scavenger hunts, all sorts of things like that. We've continued to keep members up to date with a lot of information on a weekly basis. That's been going out to Cambridgeshire County Councillors, Peterborough City Councillors, and then we've made it available. We've localised it for all district councils, sent it to the chief executives so that it can be shared with all district council members, and that gives them an update weekly on the epidemiology, but also on all the actions that are being taken. As Liz mentioned, there's been a lot of work also to publicise the 2 new testing centres and quite a lot of work planning for the enhanced test and trace contact tracing from the middle of November. But just to move you on to the next 4 weeks. So as I think Sandy was just saying, there has been, people are saying, we're confused. There's lots of different messaging. What are we meant to do? What aren't we meant to do? What are we allowed to do? And what we want to do, the government is obviously putting out a lot of information about the rules. We will support that wherever we can. But what we wanted to do was try and cut through the muddle and the confusion by taking this communications to the sentiment behind what is meant to be doing and to promote that very heavily. So what we want to do is to make sure that people understand the whole point of the next 4-week lockdown is to reduce all non-essential contact, to stay home as much as possible and stop COVID on its tracks. So the 3 messages that we are going to be promoting over the next 4 weeks are: don't invite COVID home. So don't bring people into your house, don't mix where you don't have to, stop it in its tracks by keeping a good distance, observing all of the hygiene rules. And then, as Adrian was saying, that there's no reason why not to. So all of the support that is out there, which is available to people, we will be publicising. A toolkit, a first stage of our toolkit went out this morning to all the Warn and Inform colleagues. That's all of the communications leads across all public sector organisations in the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. That's got the first stage of social media messages, some images, an internal news release, and also a script for people to record themselves. And we're already getting our community champions working through Adrian and the Community Champions Forum. These are being recorded into different languages, and we will start to be promoting those from the weekend onwards. And we'd obviously like anybody to be able to do that as well. We'll be sending that again to all members of Cambridgeshire County Council, members of Peterborough City Council, and encouraging them to share it across their own networks. And we will be targeting a lot of this in some of the areas where we know we've got particular issues. This toolkit will be updated every week. We will have more information and like the successful Halloween campaign, we will also be giving people ideas and hints and examples of things that they could be doing. And we will be backing that up with an awful lot of media, general media, case studies, features, stories that we'll be getting out across our own channels, but we'll be working with all our local media colleagues to try and get those messages out to actually demonstrate how people are managing, supporting each other, and keeping themselves going through the 4 weeks in a way that they can really observe the rules, which is not to have any non-essential contact with other people, so that we can stop COVID in its tracks and we can resume from hopefully the 2nd of November in the very possible lowest tier that we can get to, so that when we come out of this, the restrictions on our area are the lowest possible ones. So that's what we're going to be promoting, trying to cut through the noise, trying to get the information out, keeping it interesting, keeping lots of nice, positive, upbeat suggestions for people to do things, and also making sure that people realise there's no reason why not to, with lots of materials which can be adapted by all district councils so that they can have their own information on it, they can have their own phone numbers on it to direct people to the hub details, and we will continue to promote that through the next 4 weeks. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Christine. Very comprehensive. Bill, I did see your hand up. Has it been answered now?
I think Christine's answered my question. It was really, I was going to suggest that the toolkit goes to district councils as well, but I think you said it's going to. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Adrian.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I know Christine knows this, but for the avoidance of doubt, I think it's really important the toolkit is also shared with our fantastic network of parish and town councils, and also we've got such a rich network of voluntary and community and faith organisations across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Sandy, for sure, has served on our community resilience group since we stood it up at the start of the pandemic. It meets fortnightly, 30 or so representative bodies on that group, and again, I know Christine's hooked into that, but that will reach, you know, many more residents, I think, with the messages that we need to get out there, and very much building on Sandy's feedback from the survey. So if we could just make sure that those are covered, I think that will really maximise the effect.
Very appropriate, Adrian. I agree.
I would say, as we said, we're going to update it every week. So the first bit will go out, and it will indeed go out to all the voluntary groups. So I should have mentioned all of the different people that we're sending it to. It's a cast of thousands, but we will be updating it every week. So we'd be really happy to get suggestions, and you know, so anything that comes back, anything that you hear through your networks, any way that we could refine it. We are very responsive. We can turn on a sixpence. We can make sure that we can update things and get it out for the next week's updates to make sure that we're really responsive to the way that people are receiving the messages.
Thank you. Sandy.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I really welcome the clarity and everybody having these tools to use. So thank you, particularly the languages. So this worked. We got feedback that this was such a good thing before. So really pleased to hear that you're doing that, and we're really pleased to support you however we can and work together. And we'll let you have feedback as soon as we get it. We'll keep you updated with feedback. My question is around letters. So I'm aware that there's letters going out to what's now going to be called the extremely clinically vulnerable group. I just wonder how kind of like the messages that go out to that group, because before that was where we picked up a lot of confusion, because people go, well, what does that mean for me, because I've been told this. So I'm just wondering if in a future update there maybe might need to be some referring between the two sets.
Christine.
I'll hand that one over to Adrian, because he is totally across this one.
Okay, Adrian, please.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So the 32,000 clinically extremely vulnerable people in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are receiving national letters this week. Well, there's one version for adults and one version for parents who've got children and young people on that list. We've seen copies of those. They are now uploaded on the internet, and they are, because they're a general letter, I think they are quite complex again. So what we are doing locally is to contact from today our cohort of clinically extremely vulnerable people with a further, hopefully more straightforward version. It's one side of A4 for a start, not the 7 sides that people are receiving in the post. And it sets out basic interpretation of the national letter, but importantly, it provides all of the contact details for the local hub network, which was stood up again, effective from yesterday. And the letter is, we've sought input from our district council colleagues because we need it to work for each of their local populations. I'd be absolutely delighted, Sandy, if we could run it past you as well, and indeed any other communications, given the feedback from the survey. I think it's now incumbent on us to not ignore that and ask you perhaps to comment on anything we need to put out, particularly for that cohort of people who are going to be very anxious.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Is that okay, Sandy?
Yeah, thank you very much. We'd be absolutely delighted to, and it does, yeah, anything we can do to allay the anxieties of those people. And I think particularly as well with the NHS trying hard to keep open for business, despite, you know, the numbers going up. If we can help try and keep those people healthy, then that will keep the pressure off the system as well, won't it? So good information. Yeah, thank you. Be delighted.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. If I can make just two comments about comms. We in South Cambs, we've had a couple of forums with local community volunteers and parish councillors. Dr. Robin kindly spoke at the first one. It was very well received. Just make the point that the last one we had, there was nearly 100 people on the call. It's clearly something that people want to hear what's going on. And please feel free to use that if you wish to get messages out. Okay, just talk to Gareth Bell at District, and we'll do it that way. I know you're speaking to him routinely anyway, but I just wanted to make that point. And the second thing, what came out loud and clear at the forum the other day was there are concerns over mental health. That's something that the volunteers are already coming across. People, isolation. And if there's some way of putting that into our action plan, I think that would be very welcome. Thank you. Thanks,
Bill. Good comments there. Thank you. Okay, I've got no one else that wishes to raise anything on this. So, Christine, thank you very much. I'm going to use Chair's discretion because I remember what I wanted to ask Liz before, and hopefully it's of interest to others as well. Liz, if you could. There's obviously reports of a slightly different strain of the virus coming from abroad, Spain in particular, etc. I'm assuming it's very, very similar because we can pick it up with testing. In fact, it's so similar, no one's calling it COVID-19.1 or COVID-20. So, you know, how should we be perceiving this? Is this a different threat or the same threat? It's just when people are asking or hearing something like this, obviously they're a bit concerned that it's yet another slightly different strain and we're not prepared for it. Are we okay with this?
Yes, I think that's a really good question, Councillor Hickford, because people, these things are sort of projected on the news and people are not quite sure what to think about it. So my understanding is that we are continuing to work in the same way, and it is actually quite early days to understand this new strain. And I haven't had any messaging down through our public health systems to say this is very different, we need to react to it in a different way. This is something that we have to worry about all COVID-19 because COVID-19 is a very unpleasant disease, and that's why we have a 4-week national lockdown and all these measures in place. So all COVID-19 we take very seriously, but I have not had anything down those public health routes to say that this is a new and very different emergency or that we should be treating it in a different way. So I hope that's helpful.
It is helpful, and I'm not going to open up a huge debate, but I have got Councillor Hudson that wants to come in. So it's my own fault. I opened it up a bit. So, Peter.
Thanks, Roger. Just to go a little bit further on that particular strain of COVID, it's mostly in Scandinavian countries. I think Denmark just was taken off the government travel list, and places like Holland and Spain where they have mink farms, and this strain of COVID is in the minks, so can be passed on to humans. Thousands of minks are being destroyed as we speak. And so that's the strain you're talking about. It's not over here yet, but it depends how many mink coats come over, I suppose.
All right, Peter, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, I've got no one else that wishes to speak on this, and it leaves us hopefully long enough to go on to the last agenda item, which is November lockdown expected outcomes. So can we move on to that? And it's also forward planning, which I've discussed with Liz, because I think it's important that we don't just look at what's happened, but what we try and do in the future as well. So can I invite Liz Robin to introduce this item, please? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And this is really for us to ask your steer as a board on what our aims and vision should be, particularly for the period after the 4-week lockdown. Because and there's a number of questions, I think, about that. So the first is, Christine's already talked about aiming to come out of this lockdown in the lowest tier that we can, so with minimal government intervention and the maximum of things open. And that's a very straightforward aim, but to get the views of the board on that, I think there's other questions about where we want to be in terms of our communities and their understanding of what we need to do to stay in that position, because we could come out and then everyone could say, hooray, start mixing socially again with gay abandon, and we could see a very rapid rise in rates again, or we could try and work with our communities and see whether we can get some sort of longer term work in there to keep the rates down. Then there's the question of what we want to do with our test and trace system as well. And I think what's our ambition in terms of our testing and our tracing. So it would be really good just to get, in a sense, a view from the political leaders on the board as to what your vision and ambition is for the local system, because we need to be thinking now during this 4-week lockdown period, we need to be thinking about what do we do next? How do we take our strategy forward for the next months? Because COVID-19 will still be with us at the end of the 4 weeks.
Well, I'm sure I speak for Councillor Holditch as well when I say we want to come out at the end of this 4 weeks in the best possible shape we possibly can be. You know, we don't want to have any thoughts of local lockdown continuing or anything like that. So obviously we're beholden to what's happening nationally, but we need to make sure locally we're as in good a shape as possible. But John, would you like to come in on that at all? You're on mute, John.
Yeah, I know. I've got a new computer and I can't find the mute button. Yes, yeah, I agree entirely with what you say. I mean, that's our objective and the things we put in place. It's difficult to say I am certain because it does depend a lot on the reaction to the public, but I'm pretty certain the things we've got in place will achieve that.
I mean, for me, I'm not sure we can list outcomes at the moment, Liz, in so much as this is what we want. I mean, we certainly know what we want, what we wish to happen, etc. We're very beholden to what happens over the next few weeks. As I say, with contact tracing, with the spread of COVID or the non-spread of COVID, hopefully. I think it's a very difficult question to just say, you know, where do we want to be? I think we all want the same thing. It's how we go about that. But I think that's a moving landscape at the moment. So, I mean, you've kind of put us on the spot. I see Wayne wants to come in as well. Peter, is that a legacy hand, Peter Hudson? No, it's not. Okay. I'll start putting other people in, so that's good. Peter.
Yeah, you're right what you say, Roger. We have to prepare them before we come out of this 4-week lockdown. We've got to get people and we have to explain how you can live an almost normal life, not a normal life, almost normal life with COVID. And, you know, I've been telling people that in Peterborough and all over Cambridgeshire for the past, I don't know how many weeks, and it is possible. However, it isn't possible unless we get it to the young people, particularly within Cambridge and Peterborough, but more so Cambridge. When you walk around the town or you see photos of them at night, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder outside the Regal in Regent Street, and that includes university students. So yeah, we may have had a good thing with getting the message out to the young people, but when you go around and walk over Jesus Green, the message isn't working because they're sat in groups, they're next to each other. The whole place a couple of 3 weeks ago was absolutely packed, and I would suggest that 90% of those were university students. And also, perhaps we should look at our employers, because if you walk into Bar Hill or Tesco, I don't know, say about 10:30 last night, you would see most of the staff will wear their masks, as they should do, but there were some staff that were not wearing masks. Some were permanent staff and some were agency staff. So I think letters or even a visit from our environmental health colleagues from district to Tesco's and Bar Hill to ask them why they're not making sure all their staff wear masks, as they should do. Liz, perhaps you can comment on that, please. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I think I'm clearly hearing the ambition that we need to be working hard during this period to come out as low on our case rates as we can. And I think from what you're saying, Peter, there is also the opportunity to plan for how we are going to manage the situation. You're talking about Cambridge, and a lot of shops and pubs and so on are going to be closed for the next few weeks, but having those plans in place for when they reopen to make sure that we don't go back to the situation that you describe. And that can be about messaging and communication, but also potentially about the sort of enforcement that's going on. So I think what I'm hearing is officers, please forward plan for that and really get your plans in place to move into a different position when lockdown ends.
Thanks. If I could just come back briefly on that, Roger, please. And also, we need to make sure that the people know, and the university and the Vice Chancellor, everybody knows that if we have to lock Cambridge City down, then we should lock Cambridge City down. We should not be frightened to lock Cambridge City down. I don't think people of South Cambs, East Cambs, for example, who border Cambridge City should have to suffer extra lockdowns because the young people of Cambridge are spoiling for everybody who's working really hard. I think they've got to know that if they don't conform, we'll lock them down.
Thank you. I've got to move this on a bit because we are going to run short of time, and this has caused a little bit of blue hand. For me personally, my only statement would be, now I've thought about it, is Liz, I'll throw it back to you. What is it that we can do different? We have our plan in place. What is it we can do differently that will make a difference? What decisions do we have to make politically that's going to make a difference that we're not doing at the moment, that is sort of should we, shouldn't we? So that I'll throw that back to you, and that's not a question for you to answer now, but that's just what I want to say. So Wayne, I'll bring you in, please.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so I think the question is what we're asking, or what we're looking for, or what we're expecting. In terms of Peterborough, Liz, particularly, and Adrian, we don't want to get back into a situation where December the 2nd comes and everybody starts to party and live their lives as they were previously doing, because we will just end up back in the same situation, which I'm half expecting government to announce another lockdown, January or February or whatever, if the R rate continues to rise. So from our perspective, I'm interested in what enforcement we're going to do, because we know at a granular level, more or less, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, where the outbreaks are occurring and they're geographically identifiable quite easily. So what resource are we putting into that? Have we got enough resource? And it's not all about marshals. What powers do we have to make people comply? And Bill, you're quite right. It is, or was it Peter, about youngsters, the same in Peterborough, that, they're just kind of oblivious to being spreaders. So I want to know what we're going to do to up our game. And we've done really well in Peterborough, I'm not knocking it, as other areas in the county. What are we going to do to up our game? Because what we don't want, Liz, is to go into tier 3. Because it's not good for the economy, it's not good for, people's well-being and mental health. So that's what we should be thinking about in terms of outcomes. How do we avoid the situation getting worse? Because look, where are we now? 150 or just there or thereabouts? And we were at 40, previously. And we thought it was heaven when we got down to about 15. So that should be our aims and aspirations. Where do we want to go next? Because otherwise we're just going to, well, we'll tip into another tier. And, you know, that's not good for the local economy and everything else. It's a balance, difficult. That's all I was wanting to say. Thanks, Roger.
No, Wayne, that's fine. It kind of comes in, I won't ask this for a response on that. It kind of comes in, what is it we should be making decisions on and doing differently? So I understand what you're saying there. Thank you, Wayne. Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. First of all, I'd just like to come back on the question you asked. I can confirm that the finances from the fixed penalty tickets do go to central government. Now, where they go from there, I believe that some of it does come back to the councils through all the different financial offers that they're giving out. I can't guarantee that, but that's what I've heard.
Thank you.
But
thank you for finding that out.
If you look at what's happening at the moment, is the demands on policing is now back pre-COVID levels, which makes it even more important that everyone takes personal responsibility, so that police involvement is really the last resort. But given the constant changes in legislation, I think I'd like to thank the majority of the general public for going about their business and giving the support to the COVID regulations. But I would urge anyone who has information about breaches of guidance to contact the constabulary online. We have got online a particular connection that is for those breaches. But as well as that, I'd like to remind people that the victim and support services will remain open throughout lockdown, because we still have domestic violence, domestic abuse, child sexual exploitation. So all those kind of things that happen when you're in lockdown, you know, it's very hard for those people to report. So those are kind of people that I'm worried about in lockdown, and how, when we come out of lockdown, how we have the support services for those people as well, because they're the victims who really do suffer at the end of the day. So that's my worry at the moment. So thank you.
Thanks, Ray. I've got two more people in 1 minute, but we'll do our best. John Holditch.
I just wanted to say there's a brilliant poem going around which is headed "Don't Blame Boris." You know, we've got some great plans to inform the public of what's going on, what they shouldn't do and whatever, and we're trying to plan for the future. But if we don't get through to those idiots that won't conform, and then you know, we'll be in this boat and still talking about this at the end of next year. Anyway, that's irrelevant, but we need to get some enforcement out there. We need to really get the message across, and we've tried. I'm not criticizing anything we've done, but we are preaching to the converted. We need to get to those unconverted.
Thanks, John. And Bill, very briefly, please.
It's very brief. South Cambs is, as you know, a rural district. We find that football teams, they all pile into the pub after a match. And I've seen it with my own eyes. They don't social distance. Can I suggest that someone writes to Cambs FA and just says, look, if your guys don't behave, we'll stop you playing football?
Okay, thank you. I mean, Liz, you kind of opened a can of worms saying what political leaders wanted going forward. And I think, you know, maybe we should set up an email exchange after this, because we really have run out of time. Have you got any last words at all, Liz?
Well, I think it's very valuable to have heard the views and ambitions that you had expressed. I think we're all completely together around we need to keep the rates down in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. We want to be on the bottom tier. That's better for our vulnerable people, and it's better for our businesses. So I think there's a really strong message coming out there. And what we need to do as officers is to go away, look again at those enforcement issues. As you say, there's so many of our residents that are complying and are doing a brilliant job. So we mustn't forget them because we need to thank them, but there are also those groups we need to get to who haven't yet received the message fully, and that may need different messaging or may need enforcement. So we need to use the opportunity of this lockdown to be absolutely prepared to have the right engagement with those groups and the right mechanisms in place in 4 weeks' time. So I thought that was a really helpful debate, and would be very keen to continue hearing your ideas through that email debate or however it's structured as we go forward. I think that's so important.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. I mean, we'll have email, and if we have to set up another meeting between now and the next scheduled meeting, we will. It's as simple as that, because, you know, I think it's a healthy debate. And if necessary, and we all need to get together, then we will. So fine, thank you for that. So I'm not letting anyone else speak, but I'll just say the date of the next scheduled meeting is the 4th of December at 11 a.m. And I declare this meeting closed. And thank you very, very much.